Assalamu alaikum, everybody. You're listening to Ramadan Radio on 87.7 FM. May peace and blessings be upon you all. Thank you so much for tuning in again this week. This is the second of our 4 segments for MEND, Fighting Islamophobia in the UK. And MEND stands for Muslim Engagement and Development. I'm here today with Imran. Of course, my name is Zara. Let me not forget to introduce myself. My name is Zara. I'm a volunteer for MEND. And I'm here today with Imran. And I'd just like to introduce him a little bit. He has been volunteering for MEND for over a decade, and he has worked across multiple industries, and that includes manufacturing, finance, energy, consulting, and government in both entry and management grade positions. And it's important I note that because today's topic is all about Islamophobia in the workplace and discrimination in the workplace. So, welcome, Imran. First things first, can you tell us a little bit about what MEND is?
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me as well. So MEND is a grassroots organization, fully community funded. I think that's super important. So we don't have any biases that come within the organization. It's all funded by yourselves. Now, for me, I think the best way I'd kind of describe MEND, the underlying principle is all about fighting discrimination across all forms of Islamophobia, whether that's in the workplace, whether it's what you see on the streets, whether you see it at government level, and when you see it in your communities itself and what you see on social media. The thing I love about MEND is it's very much always in the background. You don't hear about it a lot. It's not something where we're building a well or anything like that. But the work we do is absolutely critical in ensuring that for us, for our next generation, Muslims have an environment where they're comfortable living in this country, in the UK.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about what actually motivated you to become a volunteer for MEND?
Yeah, I think a big shout out to my wife. She just forced me to go to a talk once. As always, that always happens. The sisters always drag the brothers to the Islamic talks. And at that point, that was when I first heard about MEND and saw the work that they did. I think the thing that really sucked me in was I'm not the kind of guy who is the best at going and volunteering in like Lebanon and handing out food parcels. That's just kind of not me. Bit of a shy brother. And I love the idea of it being in the background where you can enact and make changes in employment, in policy, in government, in regulation. It was the first time I'd ever heard about an organization that was doing that, where you were essentially sowing seeds to essentially grow trees in the future. I love that about MEND, and that was absolutely the reason I got sucked in. And 10 years later, here we are. Alhamdulillah.
Wow, mashallah. Fabulous. Okay, so I'm actually very excited for today's segment. Really excited. The outline of today is, I'm just going to list out a little bit. So we're going to talk about workplace discrimination. We're going to have examples included and how to navigate some situations. We're going to talk about EDI, and so equality, diversity and inclusion, and what inclusivity actually means to Muslims. We're going to talk about Islamophobia in the workplace, so including allyship, reframing da'wah, Gaza, navigating difficult situations. We're going to talk about some resources, as we said last week, and I might actually keep mentioning last week's segment, so I'm sorry if you've not watched it, but if you do want to rewatch it, it's live on YouTube. But MEND have a vast number of resources in different areas when it comes to Islamophobia. And then I'm also going to talk about how we can maintain a strong Muslim identity in the workplace. So to quickly start off, we keep talking about this word discrimination. What actually is it? Can you define it? And what is discrimination in employment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to describe it is discrimination is very much unfairness. But it's unfairness in a way where you shouldn't be unfair. So a lot of people know about age discrimination, where someone will look at someone who's in their 50s and 60s and be like, hey, I'm not hiring you anymore. You're kind of old. You don't know how to use ChatGPT. But It's absolutely wrong to think that. Race is another one. Absolutely. You see it everywhere, where depending on the color of your skin, you could be discriminated against a task, whether consciously or unconsciously is important. And the one that obviously we'll focus on today is religious discrimination, where your religious affiliation, whether that's Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or anything else, unfairly puts you in a position where people will unfairly discriminate against you for something that you absolutely have the capability to do. So that's the best way I could probably summarize what discrimination means.
Fabulous. And what about microaggressions? or do you want me to come on to that one?
You can jump. Yeah, go on. Go on, sis, you jump in.
I actually have a definition of microaggressions because, again, we hear it all the time and some of us don't actually have an understanding of what it is. The actual definition is that it's everyday, subtle, intentional, and sometimes often unintentional, so as you said, unconscious or unconscious, interactions or behaviours that communicate some sort of bias towards historically marginalised groups. So, Imran, if we start right from the beginning of employment and of the employment journey, so when we're applying for jobs and we're in the recruitment phase, are Muslims actually disadvantaged in gaining employment? I actually hear two sides of the spectrum here. I've got some people that have said to me, yeah, absolutely it exists. And I've got some people that are really, they're very confused. Saying, Zara, are you sure this is real? We live in the UK. I don't think there's any sort of corruption over here. But is there, are there any stats to back this up?
Absolutely. It's such a good question. I think a lot of us are made to feel like it is a perceived thing that is in our head as Muslims, and we're, hey, you're the common enemy, and we can't get jobs. It's not true. If you look at the stats, then I don't want to spew off too many. So the Guardian have done studies where even if you just look at census stats itself, anybody who has stated that they're a Muslim and you compare them to Christians or any other religious affiliation, they have significantly higher levels of unemployability. That's number one from a religious perspective. Now, number two, let's talk about geography. So 60% of Muslims live in the areas of highest unemployment. Now, why is that super important? Is if you're in areas that have high unemployment, who are your role models? What jobs are even there for you to grab? These things are serious disadvantages for Muslims. Now, the one that's really stark and one that men have present on multiple occasions is a study that the BBC did where they had a CV absolutely identical. Same format, same experiences, everything was bang on the same. All they did was change the top name from Muhammad Alam to, I think it was Adam Heaton, and they sent it out to 100 job opportunities, same job opportunities. Adam Heaton got 3 times the number of interviews versus Muhammad Alam.
Wow.
Like, how stark is that? Then on top of that, they posted it on, do you know how you have your Indeed job boards where you just throw it on there?
Yeah.
And again, Adam Heaton had 4 recruiters reach out to him directly versus Muhammad Alam, who only got 2.
Oh my goodness.
Now, that is pretty stark. Same CV, same experience, just a name change. Shows you how impactful it is in terms of just having a Muslim-sounding name on your potential of getting employment. So, yeah. The stats are there. The stats are there to back it up.
There's actually another important stat that I had written down from IAM. So again, IAM is Islamophobia Awareness Month, the campaign that runs every year in November. And they had surveyed some UK Muslims. Now, 37% of them had said that they faced Islamophobia at recruitment stage. Mm-hmm. But when it came to black Muslims, that figure rose to 58%. So over half of black Muslims felt that they had faced discrimination. And the other thing is that's quite important about this is the generational impact. Mm-hmm. It's not just affecting one generation. It's going to affect the other and the other. And again, we talked last week about how men needs to be sustainable and how we need to bring more youth into the organisation because the resources that are here are going to be used in the future. As you said, planting seeds and having those trees in the future. It's the same concept. So why is this? Is this a perception thing about Muslims?
I think it's in part perception for sure. If you look at, and I'll talk about some personal experiences here because I've been on the other side where I'm hiring people in. If you look at the overall narrative surrounding Muslims, whether you believe it or not in the media, let's talk about immigration or common enemy or let's just say terrorism as another word, that narrative in itself, whether you listen to it or not, by osmosis, the more you hear about things, perceptions start to build in your mind. It is just the reality of how this world works, right? And those naturally seep into employment. So what do I mean by that? If I want to hire someone, I'm going to hire someone who I feel I will be able to get along with, who I feel it's almost a game of risk. I'm going to choose the person who's the least risky for me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to choose someone that I understand, I can vibe with, potentially go skiing, go play golf, that kind of thing. Because for me, it's a lot easier to manage and reduces that risk of the person that's coming in. Now, ultimately, that always leads you to hire someone who looks like you, sounds like you, has the same name as you, or has similar experiences as you.
Yes.
And this is exactly how it plays out. Whether conscious or unconsciously is just a reality of how it is when you're hiring people. I can speak from my own examples. When I'm hiring someone, I put my hands up, I've got a positive bias towards Muslims. It's just a reality because I'm so much more comfortable being able to, right? Like, it's someone I can relate to. I see a sister in a scarf, I have an affiliation. It's just a reality. But when you look in the workplace, and this is what we've talked about, because of the underrepresentation of Muslims in the workplace, automatically the bias moves towards people who are non-Muslim being favoured over Muslims.
Absolutely. So, moving on. Now we've passed the recruitment phase. A Muslim gets a job, and we've passed those barriers.
Mm-hmm.
There's still more barriers to face. What are some of the more common barriers that they do face in the workplace, and how does this then impact both Muslims in their current role and in their future career aspirations?
Yeah, it's really, really good questions. I think, again, I'll draw a lot on my own personal experiences. So I think when I joined as an analyst, my first kind of role coming out of university, I think the thing that always is top of mind is you come in and you're like, is there a prayer room? Is there a prayer room? But you're so shy that you never ask, is there a prayer room? Second thing, food. Is there halal food? I know it sounds really petty, but these little minor things are the things that make you either comfortable that, alhamdulillah, this is a place that has thought about Muslims and put in a place where they've created an environment that's comfortable for Muslims, or it's completely the opposite, right? So that's kind of number one. And then I think number two, stepping into it, I think the thing that I found really difficult when I first joined as an analyst, and I think a lot of Muslims, and this will resonate with a lot, is how many people you see that are Muslim around you. And the challenge that comes with that is that lack of seeing someone who's like you it does make you feel isolated. It is literally the reality. I don't know, let's talk about school canteen. You naturally gravitate towards people that kind of look like you, sound like you. But when you're in a situation where no one looks and sounds like you, that automatically makes you feel a level of uncomfortability. So I think that from the highest level is something that automatically creates a barrier. Now, why is that a problem? Is because a lot of people who, if you're struggling to pray in work, or you're struggling with food, or you're struggling with seeing people that are like you, it automatically moves you towards being like, oh, bro, 1 year, I'm leaving. I'm only going to do this for a year, then I'm starting my own thing. And it's actually a travesty that Muslims feel like that after like 2 or 3 weeks in the workplace. It shouldn't be like that, in short. So I think that's kind of like the first line barrier.
I think also, just to add on to that, that feeling of isolation impacts psychologically as well. That self-esteem drops, that self-confidence drops.
1,000,000%.
I mean, you've almost lost your potential.
Before you've even started,
Absolutely.
Which is actually so sad. It's actually so sad, but it's genuinely the reality, and I'm sure a lot of Muslims who are listening in work feel exactly that way. I think the second bit, building on your point actually, when you are the only Muslim in the office, what it also does invite is people asking you some properly rogue Islamic questions.
Yep.
Like they'll hear something, they'll see something, they'll read something, and straight away the first person they're going to turn to ask questions is yourself. Now, I would say in my experience, 98% of those questions have always been people genuinely wanting to understand and learn. And in that sense, you answer. But there's always those 2% where it's absolutely not that. So yeah, I think especially now, let's talk about the Palestine situation. I think that whole situation created so much conversation around it. And me being a Muslim, I had to answer those questions. Now, I think what that does is if you feel uncomfortable answering those questions, it puts you in a really difficult situation, and a situation that no non-Muslim would ever have to face or feel. Now, that's important on us. Do we need to educate ourselves? Absolutely. I think that's something we should 100% take away. But also, it's again, when we're talking about barriers at work, it is a unique barrier that Muslims face that others don't, which is how do you hold on to your Muslim identity at work and then feel comfortable and confident enough to answer on your Muslim identity, even though you should argue, do you even have to? Like, it is just your identity, ultimately. But it is, again, another reality that we face in the workplace. I don't know, sis, if you've experienced that kind of thing around those kind of situations.
I actually it's the reason why I got involved in Mend. I have a public profile, and I do henna and face paint, and I was doing henna and face paint designs that were Palestine related. So, for example, watermelons or the kufiya on people's hands with henna, and I would be posting it on my social media in an attempt to fundraise for Gaza. And I actually got reported to my organisation that I work for, and I had quite some stark accusations against me. I was told I was inciting hatred. I was told that I was causing division in the communities. I was told that I was supporting a terrorist organisation, even though I was supporting the civilians of Gaza, because Gaza, Israel, the Israeli government are all separate entities. And I had to be spoken to by my manager's manager. And I was panicking. Yeah. I was thinking, I've done something wrong. Should I not have spoken up? I was really in fear, and I was in fear of losing my role in this organisation. And I was actually at the point of this whole thing happening, I was trying to apply for a job with them. So, as in, for context, I was volunteering at present, and then I was trying to get full time with them. But this whole fiasco happened, and I was really, really, really worried. And that's when it was actually you that told me to go and speak to Sister Sabina from the IRU, so it's the Islamophobia response unit we talked about last week, who specialises in employment law, is it?
Yeah, all forms of discrimination. They're a wonderful unit, free, pro bono, loads of lawyers and solicitors that help exactly situations like this. Yeah.
And I got help from them. She gave me advice on how to deal with it in the meeting that I had, and it came out positive. I had to be told the social media policy, and I was also told that you've got to be careful with what you post, in the sense that people can manipulate things. Absolutely. And they have their own agenda and can flip things against you. But one thing that I took away from it was that I shouldn't be fearful to speak about what is just.
Exactly.
And I have something to fall back on. I have Mend. And I remember there's another Mend resource that's actually on their website, mend.org.uk, is how to talk about Palestine in the workplace. And it talks you through, because it's a UK organisation, it's by UK laws, and you can see what you can and what you can't say according to UK laws, and how you can educate people about it, and talk about the stats, and talk about the history, and just talk about facts. You know?
And I think this is the thing, and subhanAllah, it's amazing that you had the confidence to go and have that realization. But I think a lot of people in those situations would have almost shelled and kind of just left the volunteering organization and gone, which is such a travesty, because you've actually done nothing wrong. Another one that builds on that, my sister-in-law, I don't know, you cool kids nowadays, you have all sorts of stuff going on. But she had like a jumper that was like a Palestine thing. But I looked at it and I couldn't even figure it out it was a Palestinian thing. But subhanAllah, she was wearing it at work, and she walked down a corridor, and someone reported to her manager that she's basically inciting, or she's showing a political agenda by wearing that jumper in the workplace.
Right.
And I was just like... And she was super flippant about it and kind of laughing it off. But then if you think about it, is it actually a laughing matter?
Exactly.
Like, you can't even wear a jumper nowadays in the workplace. So these are the things we talk about. Like, some things are have a clear agenda consciously and have some element of Islamic rhetoric behind it. And some people just unconsciously would rather be in a situation where if they hired someone who was not a Muslim, say, they wouldn't have to deal with any of this kind of noise that comes with it. And this is where it comes back to the first point we're talking about, right? When I'm deciding who to hire or not, I think a lot of people think of it from a risk perspective, and they're like, who is less risky for me? Who's going to be less of a headache for me? Which it absolutely shouldn't be, unfortunately.
Wow. So, when it comes to growth, why are Muslims not landing in senior positions?
Yes, again, super, super, super interesting. And I'll talk about it from personal experiences, having been... I've been a manager for a number of years now. Alhamdulillah. I think that let's talk about the last one that I just did. So we have maybe 200 or so people that we'd have to rank and decide who gets promoted and who doesn't. The bit that I find so fascinating is a lot of it. It doesn't matter what you do in the year. If I'm looking over a portfolio of 200 people, I have not got time to understand, how much work has Zara delivered? I just don't have time. It's too many people. So it all comes down to conversation. Multiple managers in a room making decisions based on who they feel is the best fit to be promoted. Now, where does that become an incredible challenge for Muslims is I'm going to speak and vouch for the people who I see who are my friends and people who I hang out with outside of work and hang out in positions and places where we can have chats and gossip and do whatever. Now, in the UK, where is that main place? It's the pub. It's just a reality, right? After work, people go out for drinks. Most Muslims, incredibly uncomfortable going, decide to stay at home. Naturally, right? You're a Muslim. Now, what that does is it automatically makes you, and you could argue, makes you feel like you're on the back foot in that promotion race, because even the basic conversations, hey, let's talk about football or this or that, you're just not privy to, you're not in there, and you're not building those relationships and rapport. Now, that's part one. Absolutely. I think the environment itself and the commonalities between non-Muslims and what they can do gives them a huge advantage. It absolutely does. Now, number two, what does
that's not to say, guys, that we can go to pubs, by the way.
Absolutely. Your Muslim identity overrides everything.
Absolutely.
Now, then, what does that actually make a Muslim have to do? A Muslim has to go above and beyond to put them in a position where they are front and center of a conversation. Now, what I have experienced massively, and this isn't just Muslims, I've seen the same with most Black, Asian, minority ethnics. There's such a high level of humility and humbleness. Naturally, we're Muslims. Is like we are taught to be humble and have humility. But where this becomes an incredible disadvantage is, okay, number one, I'm not in kind of the rooms where everyone's socializing and having chats. Then number two, I don't even shout about the good stuff I do. I kind of just do my work. I do an exceptional job, but I tell no one about it. If you don't tell people about it, what happens then is you've basically double hammered yourself and hampered yourself in being able to get promoted. And I've seen so many times a non-Muslim will come and do the most basic thing, but will sing about it and to everyone, and everyone starts talking about it because they're just so well wired and versed in being able to do that. That's a huge disadvantage. I think it's a huge disadvantage. Those two things compounded together makes it incredibly difficult to find Muslims in higher managerial positions. And yeah, most organizations I've seen, Muslims, they just don't hold those top line positions as a consequence of those two things combined.
Wow. I also want to touch a little bit on casual Islamophobia. When there's a doctor, her name is Surya B, and she said in 2020, colleagues would ridicule me when fasting, asking, are you still fasting or whatever? Which is quite, or whatever. Not the nicest way to talk about it. Colleagues would ask me to talk about Muslims and things they'd seen in the media as if I was the spokesperson for the entire religion. So exactly what we've just been talking on, as if we are the spokesperson for the entire religion. She said colleagues would also get annoyed when I say I couldn't go to the pub. Now, although it doesn't sound Islamophobic, this is casual Islamophobia.
Straight up, 100%.
So I just wanted to mention that from that doctor. We also see it in employment when it comes to the media. And I want to touch on this a little bit as well. When Keir Starmer said in May 2025, calling us an island of strangers, that rhetoric was described as a risk of declining social cohesion in the UK due to the high immigration, and saying that the country is going to become fragmented. And it's divisive, it's othering migrants, and it's echoing an anti-immigrant rhetoric. That's just one example. That's what The Guardian had written. There's another one, the Great Replacement Theory. This false narrative, and it's a conspiracy theory believed by about 60% of the average French population that believe it's real. The Great Replacement Theory is the false idea that the white race will become extinct because of immigration. And it's a far-right national theory. You hear things like invasion, you hear things like the Sharia threat. You've also got the racialization of crime when it comes to grooming gangs and when it comes to child sexual exploitation. And it's dangerous when these crimes are racialized because the focus is not on where the focus should be. So, for example, we're now not focusing on safeguarding children and the processes of reporting. We're not focusing on reviewing the processes. We're not focused on the victims and the survivors and their well-being. So these examples of what we see in the media is one of the root causes as to why there's so much discrimination against us, especially when it comes to employment. Given a little bit of positivity, what practical steps do you think we can take to help overcome this?
I think there's so many. I think there's some that are on us as Muslims. There are some that have to happen at government policy level. There's some that have to happen at a media level, like you discussed, which is an absolute... It's a disease that most people don't understand. So let's kind of start on the media front. Everyone sees a newspaper article and you kind of throw it on the side, like, oh, standard rubbish that Daily Mail or whoever is producing. But people don't understand how many people actually read this. And again, like I said, whether or not you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, those kind of narratives do marginalize Muslims, period. And it will impact you both on the streets. It impacts you in terms of the support that we get as a group. Say you want to build a mosque. Huge impacts it creates, and absolutely it impacts you in employment. Number one, let's talk about solutions then. I think from a company perspective, companies have to start getting more transparent on everything that they do here. So again, I'll talk of personal experience and we'll get to exact specifics. One of my colleagues who was black, the EDI stats came out for a huge company, FTSE 100 one, I don't want to name them. And it basically came up with this beautiful story about how we've had high EDI, yada, 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 in terms of statistics. So my colleague basically emailed them and was like, can you give us a breakdown? Show us what the level of diversity is at each level in terms of actual BAME population. They wouldn't have it. So they just didn't respond. They just didn't respond. Gave him some fluffy response. Basically got nothing back. So he directly emailed the CEO and was like, this is what I want. Give me this breakdown. At night, CEO responds, gives a breakdown. So it showed basically the level of black representation at each different level. So at the analyst level, the bottom level, it was way above average. But by the time you started climbing up the pyramid of management, by the third level, it was basically like one person. It completely you could see it just filter down and disappear. Wow. And that is the true reality of the story. But the level of transparency that companies need to give has to improve. The actual statistics that are behind what is your actual workforce population is so important that it needs to be disseminated, and most companies just don't do it. Then, getting back onto the hiring piece, people have to start moving towards blind applications. I told you the piece that the BBC did on the two names. We can't keep going in a world where things like names directly impact your ability to get a job interview. It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that has to be a big step that has to be changed, again, at a company level. I think all the companies I've worked for 6 now, none of them have incorporated blind CVs. None do it. I've asked, they all just don't do it, and they come up with like a kind of story about, oh, it's a lot more difficult for us to track this and do that, and it's all nonsense. Yeah, it's all excuses. It's all excuses. So yeah, that for me is a big one at a company level. Let's talk about Muslims now. I know this is gonna sound really harsh and difficult, but it's the reality. We need trailblazers. We need people who are willing to kind of go through all of this muck and come out of the other end, where they are in management positions, and then when they are in management positions, actively go and try and enact change. Again, it's just a reality. You being an analyst versus you being a senior manager, the level of voice is completely different. You have so much more power to actually drive change, be involved in hiring, sit on the table for promotions. And when you're there, again, this is a call out to all the Muslims there, you have to show a level of positive bias. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not saying, oh, Sister Zara, she's half capable, which you're not. She's half capable. I'm going to hire and put her in a position. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is You need to be there, and when everyone's talking about, Sister Zara, she was super humble. Like, every time the interview started, she kept saying we. And when she was talking about her university, she said she was lucky to be in university. Like, you need to be in that room and actively advocate for them and be like, that is just that's her nature. That is the nature of a Muslim. That's the nature of someone who's minority ethnic. Yes. This is how they are. This is how they speak. It's not always I. It is we. It's not always, it's everything turns to Allah and what He's bestowed on you to be able to do what you want to do. You need to be in those roles. So trailblazers absolutely is number one. Number two, starting your own companies. I say it all the time. The more Muslims have started companies, big companies, and they grow into mega companies, the amount of control you'll have in actually driving employment and employability, especially in areas that have high levels of unemployment that we have, will make a huge difference. It'll make a huge difference. Because, some of the symptoms are really clear. That geographic piece is a massive, massive issue for Muslims. So, that's kind of a big call out for me, for Muslims as well, alongside obviously companies that have to drive some change. For sure.
Yeah, there's another thing I want to point out that MEND have found. If you are listening and you're working under a big organisation or a big company, there are workplaces that have large budgets for EDI,
100%,
and they seldom use it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another organisation that I was working for in the public sector that actually had no recent events around Islamophobia Awareness Month. Now, I'm not over here to boast or anything, but I'm the only Muslim in my group, in the area that I'm in. Is it not then my responsibility to speak up about Islamophobia in my city, in my group? And I took that as an opportunity, and I took it to my manager, and then they took it to their manager, and I said, Islamophobia Awareness Month is coming. It's in November. We live in Leicester. There is a large demographic of Muslims here. I want to do an event, or I want you to at least put an article out there so that colleagues can see how I can better take care of patients in a better way and give them a better quality of care. Because sometimes, like for example, you're entering a Muslim woman's home and she's a niqabi, and if we've got male people coming into the home, there's already a natural reluctance to work with them. So things like this that are needed, but I had to be the spokesperson for that, and other Muslims need to do that and need to speak up in their workplace. And if you don't want to be the one to do the campaign or to deliver a presentation to your colleagues about debunking myths around Muslims and understanding how better to care for Muslim patients, then get IAM to do it. You can email Islamophobia Awareness Month and they can come in and deliver a presentation for you. But without us being the spokespeople for our Muslim colleagues, our Muslim comrades and our communities, nothing is going to change. And you can also encourage your organisation to take up the budget that it has for EDI.
Yeah, I think those are such beautiful points. And I think your show of proactivity is exactly what's needed. It's so, and I'm being really pushy here, but it's the one thing you don't want to do is give up your Muslim identity. When you go into that workplace, you need to foster an environment that allows you to hold on to your Muslim identity and push forward. So I'll take the opposite for me as an example, right? So in my last workplace, really fancy plush office in London, we didn't have a prayer room. Mm-hmm. And because I was the only Muslim, I was just like, whatever, doesn't matter, I won't raise it, I'll just crack on. So I was praying in the first aid room. Dingy room, proper smelly, knocked it out. It was only myself praying salah. Then one day a client came, Muslim brother in Ramadan, and he's like, oh, I need somewhere to pray. And the level of embarrassment taking him to the first aid room when I was like, subhanallah, I've been part of MEND for a decade, and I didn't raise to put a prayer room and sow the seeds for Muslims to go forward to actually use the facility and have somewhere to pray. And now my brother comes to pray salah, and me and him are sharing a dingy first aid room, and I felt like, what am I doing? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You have to be proactive. You have to look at yourself and be like, what can I do that's going to sow seeds that the next, even if it's only one Muslim who benefits afterwards, benefits. That's the main thing. And you're just creating an environment that allows a Muslim to be a Muslim in a workplace.
It's again like what Asia said last week. She said, do one scary thing every day. We have to be comfortable
Absolutely.
with getting uncomfortable, and we have to be comfortable with making uncomfortable conversations.
100%.
That was a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, but you're absolutely spot on. I think us as Muslims, we have to accept the situation that we're in, and the only way we're going to change it is by dealing with uncomfortable conversations. And on that, we have to educate ourselves. And I'll allow you to point to some of the men resources, but there's so much reading material on these topics. If you're in the workplace, you have to, in this day and age, you have to accept that you are going to be potentially a spokesperson for the ummah. I know it sounds sad, but it is what it is. Is it right? No. But how do you combat that? Through education. You've got to educate yourself on some of these topics so you can be able to speak with confidence.
And on that, we don't, when we talk about educating ourselves, we're not over here trying to ask you guys to become scholars or become theologists in this. It's just the basics in understanding. There's another way of actually combating some sort of conversations. You know, when you're being asked to speak about, to be the spokesperson for the religion, sometimes reframing da'wah, which I mentioned in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, for example, that doctor that was getting these comments about, oh, were you still fasting or whatever? Sometimes, if you break it down and give different reasons, for example, a lot of the time people think you can't fast, you can't eat for 12 hours a day, you can't drink water for 12 hours a day. That's barbaric. Islam is barbaric. That's olden day things. Well, what if we said to you that that's Lent in the Christian world?
Absolutely.
Or what if we said, for health benefits, intermittent fasting is a thing now. People don't eat for 16 hours a day for their own health and well-being. That's fasting. It's the same concept. But when it's labelled as Islamic, it becomes barbaric. So reframing that, switching it to another context is one way of trying to understand, helping people to understand that actually it's not barbaric. This is just my discipline. And as Muslims, we're used to discipline.
100%.
Which other people are not used to. So that's one way of reframing things. And unpacking the narratives. There's another example here that I've just got in my notes. When we focus on issues around Muslim women, don't just focus on theological answers like rights in Islam. But if you look at the fact that the first university in the Guinness World Record, it's been recognised, by the Guinness World Record and UNESCO, is in Fez, opened by a Muslim woman. That's not a theological thing. That's the Guinness World Record. So that's another example. The things aren't unfamiliar concepts. It's just reframing it in a way that suits the person you're speaking to. I also want to just quickly mention some things about MEND. So MEND has a policy team and there's a community team. In terms of an example that they've done with the policy team, they've had submissions accepted for the Israel-Palestinian conflict inquiry and also gendered Islamophobia inquiry. So like what you were saying in the beginning, when you're in the background and you're changing policies that then impact the future generation, you've sowed the seeds. There's also another, I don't know if I mentioned this last week. When was the best time, Imran, to plant a seed?
No.
Well, you missed a bit.
Did I get it wrong? Well, 10 years ago.
10 years ago. 10 years ago probably the best time because you would have a tree today.
Absolutely.
But we didn't do it 10 years ago. No. So when is the best time to plant a tree?
Right now. There we go. See that? Well choreographed, you and I are. Alhamdulillah. But I think especially with, and don't just, obviously use MEND. This is a MEND show, so I should say absolutely use MEND. The easy read guides that MEND have are absolutely fantastic. For those of you who haven't had a chance to look at them, I highly recommend going on the website. They've been built based on what experiences Muslims have genuinely had in society. Asking for prayer spaces, dealing with situations in schools. Like, these are things that as Muslims we face day to day, and so many of us don't know how best to go about doing it. But there's a wealth of information out there. Now, don't drown yourself and get yourself too stressed out, like Sister Zara said. It's just about getting yourself educated enough that you're comfortable holding on to your Muslim identity and you're proud to hold on to your Muslim identity. And like the sister said, your identity in the workplace is in itself dawah. Your ability to hold on to your decency, your haya, your level of discipline, your work ethic, genuinely leave an example where someone who had perceptions about Muslims, they absolutely evaporate rapidly because they'll be like, no, this is not true. I know Sister Zara at work, she's a legend. That's the thing that's going to make the biggest difference in us being able to tackle a lot of these perceptions that are absolutely wild and widespread.
I was going to say something. Oh, yes. So there's actually a WhatsApp community as well for men where they put out different resources. So, for example, the mosque attacks that we just had recently, there is a plethora of how to combat it and how to reach out to the police and to the news and to the media on the best way to face it. It's Ramadan right now. Children that want to fast in schools and schools stopping them from fasting. Another one came out into my WhatsApp today. What you can say to the school about allowing your child to fast. So all these resources are there on the MEND website, fastmen.org.uk. Sounds like we're advertising them. We're trying to get money. Like we said, it's 100% community funded. It's just people don't know that it's there. Absolutely. And it needs to be used. And they're gems. They're really, really, really good. I remember reading upon the Israel-Palestine one on how I can talk about it. And then when you know you're doing it the right way, you feel more confident.
It gives you confidence.
You're not nervous about, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job.
SubhanAllah, it's absolutely true. And I think this is the bit, I think a lot of people, to your exact point, are nervous that I'm going to say something that will make me lose my job or will... I think that for me, the thing that I regret the most is when I leave a conversation where I've watered something down and made it whooshy and woolly, and I'm like, that's not a true representation of how I feel. Like that feeling for me is even worse than me feeling like I've said something that could potentially put me in jeopardy later on.
Wow.
And I think people should absolutely take that away. And it's not a level of cowardice. We're not here calling people cowards. We've lived those realities. It's so difficult to have those conversations, but education and having a good understanding of how best to combat them makes a huge difference in how you go about doing that.
And also knowing you're not on your own, which is again what we said last week. You're not on your own. There's other Muslims that are facing the same experiences that you're facing, just in a different part of the UK.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are going through that employment journey, whether they're trying to apply for jobs or are in the workplace. Like, every Muslim faces this, so don't ever feel like you're alone or isolated. This is just you. You've got people that you can turn to for sure.
Absolutely. In terms of the men's community team, I Am Alone, so Islamophobia Awareness Month alone, they've had over 50 events across the UK last month, including key launches in the Scottish and the Welsh parliaments and council launches in the north of England and London. And MEND itself has been a part of a number of key events this year, mobilising against Islamophobia conference that we had in Leicester. That happens almost every single year. And we have a panel of people that come and speak about Islamophobia. And it is really, really inspiring. So that's every November. They're part of the Together Alliance, so the march that's going to happen on the 28th of March, against the far right. Defending Islamophobia it's a key event in London, held with MAB, Cage. So there's a lot of organisations that they also collaborate with. And again, if you want to get involved, you can apply to be a volunteer on the website. It's just, if you just click get involved and you pop in your details, someone will contact you afterwards. But unfortunately, that is all we've got time for today. That went really, really fast.
A bit too fast. But yeah, no, I think kind of parting piece, and it's everything that you touched on. People shouldn't feel like, especially Muslims, don't feel like you're alone on this journey. Employment is incredibly difficult, and it's even more difficult for Muslims. Don't let people make you feel like it's a perceived challenge and it's you. We're here to help. So absolutely reach out, volunteer, and anything you need. Yeah, inshallah, as an ummah, I think we can tackle things if we work together.
Yes, and don't forget who's in control. It's not me, it's not you.
SubhanAllah, it's all Allah.
Allah is in control. Yeah, so what happens is in your qismat, it's your destiny, and what happens is for the best. You're not Absolutely. On your own because you have Allah with you. So don't lose faith in your Muslim identity.
100%.
That's where your motivation should come from.
100%, and have sabr.
Yes.
Timing is a real thing.
Yes. Well, Jazakallah everybody for listening. Thank you very much, Imran, for coming here today. Next week, we're going to be speaking with Yahya, and he is going to be talking about Islamophobia in the online space, the effects of media, and the case of Zainab Hussein, an Islamophobic attack on a Somali woman in Beaumont Leys in Leicester. So tune in for that again next Tuesday, 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And as mentioned, text in your thoughts and any questions so we can tailor the next few sessions to you. But MEND is out again. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.